Across India, various ambitious organizations are working towards the restoration of degraded ecosystems. One such organization is Sadhana Forest. Launched in 2003, the organization has restored over 70 acres of tropical dry evergreen forest near the town of Auroville in Tamil Nadu. Joining this episode as the founder, Aviram Rosen talks about the organization and the science behind tropical restoration. Don't forget to subscribe on whichever platform you are listening to. For those who decide to support the podcast through paid subscriptions on YouTube or Substack, which by the way is completely optional, 30% of the revenue from this episode will be donated to Sadhana Forest. Welcome, Aviram, to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
So, what was the idea behind Sadhana Forest?
The idea initially was just to leave my wife and I and my daughter on an empty piece of land in Tamil Nadu and reforest it slowly into a tropical dry evergreen forest, the indigenous forest of Tamil Nadu. But slowly volunteers started coming and joining us, and people started visiting, and it became a much larger project and also an educational project. So it changed over the years. And then we started another Sadhana forest in Haiti, and then in Kenya, and now in Namibia. And we have 4 more Sadhana forests in India. So now we have 8 Sadhana forest centers around the world.
Talk about the science behind the water conservation, because you guys do work a lot on water conservation. For example, you have the Lunia Kedi Water Conservation Project.
Yeah. So most of the water conservation work that we do is what's called on contour swales. Are you familiar with those?
No.
On contour swales? Okay, so swales are spelled SWALES, and they're basically structures of a trench and a hump that goes on the same topographical contour of the land. So the trench doesn't go up or down on the landscape, but goes always on the same height, even if the landscape changes. Yeah. So let's say if it's a mountain, the trench would go around the mountain, right, on the same topographical height. And that reduces erosion, because when the water is moving in a trench that is totally true to the horizon, that is totally balanced, then it doesn't flow down and doesn't cause more erosion. So on-contour swales are a very good way to do what we call triple S, to slow, spread, and sink water into the landscape. And the result of this is that if you have a slope like this, and you have a swale here, and a swale here, and a swale here, and a swale here, then the water would be evenly distributed along the slope. There would be no fast movement of water. Soil moisture would increase, and when soil moisture and soil availability when soil moisture and water availability on the land increases, then we have what's called natural regeneration. Then a forest starts to grow on its own. You don't need to plant it. Why? Because the soil is very moist and there is water standing. So animals come, they drink, they also defecate their seeds, and then the forest is growing naturally and you don't need to plant. So I have areas where I did like perfect water conservation, what is called zero runoff. So a piece of land that doesn't have any water coming out of it in the bottom in the monsoon season. And in that land, there will be a better forest than what I could plant, okay? Because the animals have chosen the species. And when the animals choose their species and they make the forest, they choose what species will be in the forest, then the wildlife is much more than a man-planted forest. You understand that? It's like if I build a house, design a house for you, it won't be as nice as if you design a house for you. So we let the animals design their house, to design their environment by natural regeneration, and then they come in huge numbers and they're very happy and healthy in the environment. So now we have over 90 species of birds in Sadna forest. There was not a single bird species when I started. Now there are more than 90 species of birds, so many mammals and invertebrates, and so many animals are around. And it's a beautiful environment that people from all over the world and all over India come and see. We have dozens of thousands of visitors every year coming to see the place and enjoy the animals and the forest, and most of it was done through natural regeneration.
So continuing on about water conservation. So many of India's mega cities like Bangalore and Chennai have recently had a water crisis. So what are these cities doing wrong in terms of water management and conservation?
It's not about doing wrong. It's about what happens when you develop a city. The real estate starts to be very expensive. The land starts to be very expensive. So naturally, you want to occupy every piece of land that is available. And if there is a lake, you tend to dry it and move into it with buildings. And this is a natural process. If the city is planned and the development is better controlled, then there will be less infringement on nature. But if the development is very rapid, then of course there would be more infringement on the on the natural areas, and that's happens. That's natural, but it should be controlled. It should be controlled legally, and also people should be aware of what they're doing. Yeah. Another point in this is that everybody wants to move to those cities, and one of the things we could do is to improve lives in rural India so that people are less attracted to the metro cities, and that the metro cities can grow in a slower and more controlled rate. So that's another point of view. If you want keeping the population in rural areas living a healthy and happy kind of life.
So Sadhana Forest is working on the restoration of 70 acres of tropical dry evergreen forest. What makes this ecosystem so special? And talk a bit about your restoration work in starting with your original project, and then we can move on to your projects in Haiti and Kenya as well.
Yeah, so the land that we have in Oroville is a barren land. Initially was a barren land with most of it with not a blade of grass. And we started planting the tropical dry evergreen forest species. That was not so successful because we didn't know about water conservation so much. So the trees didn't grow well. In the first few years, we realized that actually water conservation is more important than the tree planting itself. And then we started experimenting with earth dams and gabions and on-contour swales and bunds and different ways of increasing soil moisture. And the result was that the trees that we planted grew much faster. And at the same time, also areas that we didn't plant regenerated naturally, like I spoke about before, regenerated naturally into a forest. So both things happen. And our choice of species is only indigenous species that belong to the TDF, to the tropical dry evergreen forest. And it has been amazing experience to see the forest growing and all the layers of the forest evolving, and all the wildlife that is finding life in this forest, the wildlife that is part of the tropical dry evergreen forest, like the civet cats and so many other animals. Peacocks are there. It's so beautiful.
What about your works in Haiti and Kenya?
In Haiti, we concentrate on food forestry, so creating food forests around people's homes. This is an area where, unlike the area where we work in Tamil Nadu, people are very, very poor and they don't have access to good nutrition. So we are trying to provide food producing trees. For instance, one of the trees that we are planting called Brosimum malicastrum, is the Mayan nut, is a tree that produces a lot of seeds, which are very rich in protein. So this tree can produce 170 kilograms in average, 170 kilograms of seeds per year, and could, in terms of protein intake, could support a family of 5. One tree can support a family of 5 without any other source of protein. So we have planted more than 100,000 trees of this species, specific species, and 70,000 of them are producing already. We planted also many other species of the local forest. It's a sort of a dry coastal forest. And yeah, it's been going amazing. Haiti is going through a lot of political turbulence, and the president was killed, and the border with Dominican Republic is closed, many challenges, but our project is somehow sailing smoothly through all this turbulence and managing to succeed. And our team is planting trees every day. So yeah, it's going well. And then from Haiti, we expanded to North Kenya to work with a tribe called Samburu in North Kenya, planting, again, nourishing trees with them. So one of the trees we are planting there is a tree called Moringa stenopetala. It's a relative of the drumstick, the Indian drumstick that I'm sure you know, Moringa oleifera. So that's Moringa stenopetala is a relative from East Africa, and it's a beautiful tree, and it's growing very, very well there. And the leaves are very, very nutritious, so that people can also use them for cooking. It's very rich in iron and very rich in calcium. So people that have iron deficiency anemia, they can put it in their cooking every day, a handful, and can have a much better nutrition, increase their iron level, increase their hemoglobin, and also reverse a lot of the complications that come in pregnancy. Especially, it's very important for women. Also, the amount of calcium in the leaves of Moringa stenopetala is very high, so they can breastfeed better and support their kids that way. We plant another species called the Dovialis caffra, which produces a small fruit that is very tasty and very nice for jams. So people really, really like it. And it's also an excellent fencing plant. So we can plant a fence of Dovialis, and then the Moringa and other species can come in the center of the space. Then we expanded to Meghalaya. We have 3 projects in Meghalaya in Northeast India, in Khasi, Garo, and Jaintia regions. And then we expanded to Virudhunagar, south of Madurai, where we have a project also planting food-producing trees near homes in a block called Narikudi. And now, lately, we expanded to Namibia. I'm actually going there in a few days to Namibia, and we have a Sadna forest in Namibia near the border with Angola in the south of Africa. Also planting with a tribe called Himba, planting food-producing trees. One of them is the baobab. I don't know if you know the baobab tree. It's a tree that can last up to 2,000, sometimes 3,000 years. So you plant it now, and imagine that in the year 5,000, people will be enjoying the fruit. So yeah, we're continuing to make forests around the world. And we have about 1,500 volunteers per year in Oroville staying with us. We have a lot of fellows. We have a project called Plant for India. If you go to plantforindia.org, plant for the digit 4, India.org, you'll see our Plant for India fellowship, where young people from India can come and learn water conservation and tree planting and ecosystem restoration and work in one of our centers for 1 year. We have another land restoration fellowship for 1 year that is in Sadna Forest in Oroville. We have now 12 fellows that just started their fellowship there. We have another fellowship called ELF, Environmental Leaders Fellowship, which is meant for people that want to work with us also internationally. Yeah, different things.
I was actually going to ask about the Plan for India project. So you already answered it. And
Yeah, so I can talk more about it if you like.
yeah, sure.
Do you want?
You can go in full detail.
Yeah, yeah. So Plans for India is a 1-year fellowship. There are no prerequisites. You don't have to be a professional necessarily in the environment or anything like that. You just have to have a very good will and an understanding that you want to do service for nature for 1 year in a remote place. And we screen the people. We have hundreds of candidates, so we pick up the best ones and bring them on board. They train with us in Sadhana Forest in Oroville for 1 month, and then they would be sent to their respective centers to serve there for another 11 months. And after 1 year, they can leave us and go if they like, or they can, at least half of them, stay with us and become part of our permanent team. So, yeah, that's the. We are a vegan organization. I'm not sure if you know that, but we're a vegan organization. So all our long-term team and our fellows have to observe 100% vegan diet. And we also, in all our campuses, in all our programs, there's no alcohol, there's no cigarettes, there's no drugs. And if we find anyone that is using any of these substances, they're relieved immediately to go home. So we're very strict on people that are very serious. They come for the environment, they don't come for partying and all of this. They really want to do something for nature, and they're mature emotionally. And those people we accept, and we invest a lot of energy in training them, in supporting them, and growing them with us. Yeah.
So in Tamil Nadu, you also have a project called the Children's Land Project. Talk about this a bit.
Yeah. So Children's Land started about 15 years ago. It's a project where we work with local Tamil children coming from orphanages in Pondicherry, from local villages, Dalit villages, from different places, and they come once a week to Sadhana Forest, but over a long period of time. So once a week, over a year, or over at least 6 months, and they have a morning with us or an afternoon with us where they learn more about the tropical dry evergreen forest, where they have the freedom to do different kind of arts and crafts and just be themselves with a little bit less discipline than school, more free, more in nature. We also provide them with a lot of fruits as snacks, so they eat really wonderful organic fruits and they're very happy. We have our mud pool where they can also bathe and relax. And yeah, the kids love it. And it's a chance for them to connect with nature, with the forest, because most of them grew, there was no forest anymore in this area of Tamil Nadu, right? So it's their only chance to actually meet the forest and know how their ancestors have been living, years ago before the forest was cut. Yeah.
So what have been some of your most prominent challenges at Sadhana Forest?
Prominent challenges. That's a material for 10 podcasts. But I'll try to be short. So many challenges, from financial challenges. We're running everything by donations. We're not charging anyone. So a lot of financial challenges, how to fund everything. I would say cyclone challenges. We had 2 cyclones that really destroyed some of our infrastructure, one in 2004 and one Cyclone Tani in 2011, which caused a lot of damage to infrastructure. So that was quite difficult. And of course, the challenge of running an organization with so many people, with different wishes, different ideas, different emotional problems. We're accepting everyone to volunteer with us, not in the fellowships, but in the short-term volunteering. We are accepting everyone. So people come with different challenges. And yeah, we're somehow sailing through through the challenges and managing to continue. We have a wonderful team of people, local and international, who are working with us, some of them for 20 years. And this has been more than 20 years since we started. We also have the Vegan Forest Festival. Every year we have a festival in February where 700, 800 people stay and explore veganism and enjoy the forest and great vegan food. So that's also happening. Yeah. And every Friday we have a tour of the place. So it's totally free. People can come at 4:30 in the afternoon every Friday. People can come have a free tour of Sadna Forest, then see an environmental film, and then eat a vegan organic dinner for free. We also have visitors coming every day, dozens or hundreds per day coming and visiting, and everyone gets a free tour. And if they're coming during meals, they get a free meal too. So we're very open and hospitable to people. It's not like a forest with fences and guards. It's something that is open for everybody to enjoy and learn about. Yeah.
So that was the final question I had for you. Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.
If you made it till the end of this podcast, feel free to leave your thoughts on the topic and do not forget to share and subscribe. Before we end the podcast, I would like to share another list of conservation books which I highly recommend. This time it is on the topic of rewilding and ecological restoration. The first is a seminal book called Rewilding: The Radical New Science of Ecological Recovery by Glenn Blight and Paul Chipson, which covers the restoration of ecological processes and ecosystem functioning by the reintroduction of species, especially megaherbivores. A less technical and science-heavy book is Rewilding Africa: The Restoration of Wilderness on a War-Ravaged Continent, which explores conservation across various heavily militarized landscapes. And the final book is Wilder: How Rewilding is Transforming Conservation and Changing the World. This covers the rewilding of various charismatic species ranging from pumas in the US to the Arabian oryx in the Middle East and giant tortoise. And with that, I would like to end this episode of the Think Wildlife podcast. See you next Monday.